Welcome, friends. It is Friday. It is March. It is the end of vast epochal cycles of time, spring of 2025, Anno Domino in the false light matrix calendar. I wanted today to begin this Lazarus Symposium, and let me just bring you up to speed. This is the 45th Lazarus Symposium, so I think we're well into year 4, maybe tipping into year 5. I wanted to run through the pantheon of archetypes that we psycho-civilizationally and psychoculturally regard as evil. And I want to understand from this panel of experts today what that means. What does evil mean? I think that we need to, as we begin this reset of the code, so to speak, of the end of time and the regenesis point, we need to foundationally understand what is this thing, the atom seed of contrast, of shade, against which ultimately we define our resurrection from the great sleep. The evil, the sorrow, the grief, the death, the disease, the entropy, the sorrow, the trial of separation, the sufferance, all of that stuff, which we connect really to entropy, which is shade, which is contrast, the stuff that hurts. And I want to dig up from that psychic basement these archetypes, look at them in stark contrast, and start to get some semblance, some idea of where and how to put it, the devil always serves God's design. That certainly is my take. It's what I've learned in life ultimately, that everything that presents itself on the screen of life is there to serve you and I in the perfect immanent moment, the geometry of the living moment, where we are the living witness, and where the escape from the matrix is to be had if indeed we're seeking to escape anything. It is not out there. There is no flight or fight. There is only a perfect nesting into the geometry of the living moment, into an immanent atom seed of being here now. So the tapestry of human history and spiritual inquiry, as we take that journey, the archetypes that have emerged, like Satan, Lucifer, the Demiurge, Kronos, Yahweh, Pindar, the great imperial lizard, all these kinds of archetypes embody contrasting forces of creation, destruction, anti-destruction, light, shade, chaos, and order, right? So this is the panel that producer Christy and I reached out to as the sage experts on the subject, to help us unravel this complex layer of universal contrasting archetypes, illuminating the historical, mythological, and energetic significance. So by confronting these shadow elements and understanding their purpose, which is always in service again of God's design, of the resurrection of the angelic, we can really then tap into what does unity consciousness mean? What are the mechanics of ascension, healing, restoration of higher consciousness, so on and so forth. So through this conversation, we're really looking to bridge the darkness and the light within each of us and offer a renewed vision of hope and unity to all of us, individually and collectively. I have to say that Laura Eisenhower is running late from the airport, so we heard. So we expect that she'll jump in the minute she gets indoors. But let me bring forward your favorite guru of all things relating to the geometry of light, sound, and frequency, David Sereda. David, you're very welcome. Good to see you. Okay, and let's bring forward my beloved friend, the healer and channel for the Eternal Mother, offering rebirth and cosmic connection through her work at Heart of Gold. And that, of course, is Mary Costello. Mary, you're so welcome.
Thank you so much.
And friends, again, double whammy. Who would have thunk 2 symposiums in a row? Harald Kautz-Vella, researcher investigating the most enigmatic subject matter pretty much in the world today, as far as I'm concerned, from quantum dots to the most advanced healing modalities, the remarkable Harald Kautz-Vella. Harald, thank you for joining us today.
Good evening.
Okay, lots of peace signs. No one's fucking talking to me today, but that's fine with me. That's all right. Let me just. All right.
Lucifer hates peace. He hates peace.
All right, you had your chance. You already had your chance, Sereda. You just pipe down. You have no lines right now. Okay, and let me bring in Dave Emery. Dave, very happy to see you. I just know you're going to say something.
I'm going to say something. Yeah, I thought your comment there, the resurrection from the great sleep, was absolutely apropos. Loved it. And in fact, that really says it all. So shall we leave now?
Well, that was lovely. Thank you. And Dave, friends, just remember that Dave is joining me on a Mediterranean retreat where we're doing Egypt, Cyprus, Turkey, and Greece later this year. So we'll touch on that later, throw something up, a slide up for reference. And another thing also, just before I go into this panel, anyone in the Dallas area, this is the show I'm doing tomorrow with a Patriot Street Fighter, Scott McKay. I'm actually at his digs right now. And Marsha Willardson, the Alpha Point in law, as far as I'm concerned. She's the head of our law commission. We're doing a very special show tomorrow and live stream broadcast, which I'm greatly looking forward to. In any event, today, friends, we're kicking off the alphabet of evil with David Sereda, Laura Eisenhower, who'll be joining us shortly, Harald Kautz-Vella, Mary Costello, and Dave Emery. So let's begin. David, I have to ask you first, if I may, what are your thoughts on the signature of time or end of time that we find ourselves at, March going into April, and certainly speak about 2025 and how axiomatic the time is that we're moving through right now?
Oh, well, I mean, when the idea really comes from not only the book of Revelation about an alpha and omega point where you end these great cycles, but if you read the Bhagavad Gita, which is a fraction of the Mahabharata, we can see something that looks exactly like the event of the Revelation. In fact, it's a carbon copy, but it happened over 7,000, somewhere around 7,000, 5,000 years ago, which shows a battle on the earth being viewed from above by intelligentsia from outer space beings watching over. And Arjuna is led by Krishna, his enlightened master, avatar, actually teacher. And he's, in the end of the battle, he shines like the sun above the battlefield, yet Krishna is still walking on the ground. And it shows the end of a human battle between the illusion of the ego, which is good and evil, judgment. And in the end of this, there is a great era of peace, right? And the book of Revelation reads exactly the same. There's supposed to be this battle of Armageddon that occurs on the face of the earth, the end game of the ego. It's really the ego who is battling in this illusion over the egotism of good and evil, who's right and who's wrong, which is a game. And then at the end of the battle, Christ appears in the sky, shining like the sun, just like Krishna did 7,000 years ago. And there's 1,000 years of peace. And in retrospect, 1,000 years of peace isn't very much, because we've already passed 2,000 years since the crucifixion resurrection period. So when you think of 1,000 years of peace, what the Revelation says is yet there's another let out of this Luciferian dark being, and humans get yet another chance.
Very good. Very good. Beautiful. Thank you. Laura's just joined us, so I'm going to pop her in the studio just to say hi. Laura, we've done introductions. So glad you got in time. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm great. How are you doing?
Very good. As you're just parachuted into the hot seat, the question here is what is the, and by the way, Laura, I'm assuming you know Harald Kautz-Vella, Mary Costello, Dave Emery, and Dave Sereda. If not, greetings, friends. I'm happy to be the one to introduce you all together.
Oh, yeah, we know Laura.
I know that you know Laura,
but
there are other faces that Laura might not know. In any event, we'll get there momentarily. Laura, what is the significance of March into April toward midsummer of 2025? What is your take on how the question was axiomatic this year is to the upshift of humanity?
Very significant with the North Node in Pisces, South Node Virgo. It's very much about the mind, body, spirit integration. When we look at the restoration of the Tree of Life template and how the cellular alphabet has been scrambled up, draconian overlays on the planetary grid network, how that's impacted our DNA. This is really an opportunity to look at our physiology, where programs have been installed in our unconscious, so that when we move into North Node Pisces, we can bring light to the unconscious levels of our multidimensional nature and get out of that lower astral where entities and archons and these lower forces are really feeding on the imbalance of the duality, and where the epigenetics of the mind speaking to the body is speaking programmings and indoctrination instead of truth, instead of connection to our creative imagination. So it's a major time of purification with this nodal access. Then we've got Uranus in Taurus still. It's going to be moving into Gemini, Jupiter moving into Cancer. Mars is still square Chiron. So there's a lot about the identity crisis of this awakening. Like, who am I in the face of this? Where a lot of people are like, we're awake, we know who we are, but we're being smeared and attacked. So people are experiencing the Chiron wound in different ways. And it's really coming back to that that trauma that we were all born with that we don't fully understand, because we have foster parents that kept us from our true divine inheritance, and who our real cosmic family and parents are, which are not lower creator gods and Anunnaki that have manipulated our DNA, that we've inherited through the behavior patterns and the addiction matrix that we got in a dependency bond with. So it's a beautiful time of moving through that, but also moving through these artificial layers where AI and distortions and belief systems still hook in, but the body's going to reach a crisis point, which it already is for many, to begin to get to know the self in the face of these challenges and undo the program to begin to open up to the higher frequency that dismantles the dark weapons.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's beautifully concise. Harald, I want to ask you, you, as far as I'm concerned, are really the researcher, scientific mind researcher really at the tip of the spear for so many years in interring and bringing to light what I would regard as the most nefarious and awesome aspects of how contrast, shade, evil, if we like to use that term, by stealth is moving in, even at the micro level, intervention of our reality matrix. When you raise subjects and specters like Morgellon syndrome and black goo and what have you, these to me are just really where the interfolding of that contrast and shade into the temporal plane are most nefarious and most insidious. So you've spent a long time in that zone, and clearly with a deeply philosophical aspect as well, which you bring to bear. What are your thoughts about this time, end of time, renewal time? Very keen to get your take on the year 2025.
I would like to zoom in from the big picture to the details. It makes more sense. So the first thing I had to learn to understand is clear definition of what evil is. And in the, let's say, in the substance, in the quality, it is the subconscious drive to restage traumatic events, where it does not matter whether you are a victim or a perpetrator. You restage the event. So if you suffered from something, you forgot what it is like suffering, you will do it to someone else to reintegrate the narrative of what happened into your consciousness. So it is a very deep and natural healing impulse that develops forces, self-organizing subconsciousness, to bring yourself into a position where you can reintegrate lost soul substance by restaging the traumatizing event. This is kind of the first thing in the substance, in the frame of what it is allowed to happen. We do have the Luciferian concept that said growth is not happening quick enough. We have to widen the possibilities. So let's take out some of the rules Source gave us to live with and close ourselves off from the heart coherence, to make more things possible to happen, to have a steeper growth path for all beings that want to join in. And within this broadened framework of possibilities, this healing reflex of the restaging subconsciousness went out of control. It started to duplicate events by restaging them, which just produced more trauma that replicated and replicated and replicated. And this is kind of a wave that got out of control within the once beautifully thought Luciferian concept. So this is kind of the big picture of what we have. And now the question, what is our point in the story? What we do have here with all the representations of evil forces and matrix structures and things and people and races and aliens meddling into our affairs, it's kind of a lab environment that had been created with the most advanced design of life available, which is the human design, with this ability to connect deep in the heart inside with Source, which no one else has, to have an anchor that goes deeper than every thinkable trauma, to produce a lab environment where we can face off that satanic principle of messed up self-healing reflexes and bring healing to it from within, basically by undergoing one cycle of transhumanist takeover that at the end of the day does not happen because we have learned our lessons. And this is kind of it's like a fractal. It's not done in one lab situation. We are in the fifth creation now. The first four ones failed to deliver the results. But now it looks like we have done it in the quality, not in the quantity yet, but in the quality. And the rest to come is just the awakening of those who have participated in the game, but are still kind of captured by all the exciting roles we can play or we had to play in this big drama.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you. Dave, galactic historian, as you are fast becoming designated, in the chronology of things, of events, of cycles, what is your take on the significance of this year, 2025?
Well, I'm just taking on board what everybody said so far, David, Harald, and Laura there. I mean, you've all painted part of the pageant of our tapestry of existence over so many billions of years. And this particular year is indeed, as has just been said, is a significant factor in the awakening. And it's the awakening to the energy, the cosmic divine design energy, which really exists within us as an encryption, and which we are coming back to after is the resurrection from the great sleep that you mentioned at the very beginning there, Sasha. That's really what's happening. And I feel that I should say that originally, for example, if we look at such names as Yahweh and Jehovah, originally 300 billion years ago, those were transformed into godheads by the family lines of the Jehovah, which was a family race line in dimensions 13 and 14. And they also call that family line the Yahweh line. In other words, they were actual family beings of very high coded Gestalt in consciousness. But once the Metatrons, who were part of that family, fell in frequency, in other words, they began to forget who they were, they transformed their family name into a godhead, and it became Jehovah or Yahweh. And that also happened with the Thoth Enki and the Marduk Enlil condition of Satan and Lulitan, who became Lucifer and Satan. And these also began as original high gestalts of energy and consciousness, but were downstepped slowly through experience. And as Harald has been saying so eloquently there, through the attempt to change things and make things better, what actually happened was that people became more unaware of who they really were. And they set all of their hopes and dreams upon other created manifestations beyond them, hoping that they would secure success and awakening for them. And of course, over many billions of years, this did not happen. And so now here we are in 2025, and we are coming out of this great sleep. And we are indeed reawakening our own awareness of our own true identity. And that is why I think that 2025 and thereafter are such pivotal moments.
Thank you very much indeed. So, Mary, same question to you essentially. What is the status quo with this unfoldment of the great Magdalene rose? There is no upshift without these petals opening in perfect and concise precision with universal law, with God's law. Where do you deem that we stand as a peoples, as a plane of existence at this time?
Well, it's beautiful to be able to share what I feel called to share, because it's really good news, and it's a place of holding. It's an offering of holding and of a softening of, let's say, we have come this far. And what I want to offer is this: we are in the time of the one breath. We are returning to the balancing breath of compassion. We are, as I speak, I see this beautiful golden water all around us, this golden pool around us. And I've been told this moment is very much prophesized. We are within, I've been told the words, golden formation. We are returning to the balancing breath of compassion. We are within the free sea. And within the free sea, the currency of exchange is love. And everything, there is an order of love, and everything is finding its balance now. So this order of love is, the full length and breadth of all that there is. It doesn't miss anything out. So when we're talking about the subconscious, the origin of shadow, the origin of these illuminations, these recurring compulsions, truly these are places where the breath was almost captured, where the light in the breath was almost captured in damnation, taken out of the pattern of compassion. Compassion is a breath, but it is a pattern. It is the rose pattern that I speak of. So these, if we want to say demonic forces, these are pieces of trapped light trying to resurrect fallen timelines perpetually. And they are coming back. The seedbed, our subconscious, which I call the seedbed of our dreaming, is coming back to be ours for our dream seeds, for our full spectrum rainbow dream seeds of the rainbow breath. That is the breath of compassion.
Beautiful, beautifully stated. Let's look at this index of archetypes of shade, of contrast, of so-called evil. I'm just going to run through the primary ones, and I'm keen to learn from this panel if I've left any out here, if we've left any out here. So if you will, Christy, from the green room, if you could just throw up Tiamat, primordial chaos, time period 2000 BCE, roundabout, Mesopotamian mythology, and the Mesopotamian goddess representing primordial chaos, and the ocean destroyed by Marduk in the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish. And the significance, of course, symbol of destruction as a precursor to creation, balancing chaos and order. So let's move to Kronos, the devourer, time period 1400 to 1200 BCE. This is Greek mythology. Origins, a titan who devoured his own young to maintain power, later overthrown by Zeus. The significance embodies the cyclical nature of time and the inevitability of change. Let's look at Yahweh, the lawgiver and judge. Time period, again, 1200 to 600 BCE. This is the ancient Israelite religious seed. Origin, the singular God of Israel, simultaneously compassionate and wrathful. The significance represents divine sovereignty, authority, and moral absolutism. I would say also represents the angry, jealous gods of old, the very ones that we're seeking to depart. Let's look at Set, the desert god. Time period there, 1200 BCE. Of course, this is Egyptian mythology. Egyptian god of chaos, storms, and violence, who killed his brother Osiris. The significance reflects opposition, necessary disruption, and cycles of renewal. Let's look at Ahriman, spirit of destruction. I don't know what that totem means. That's very odd. Time period 1000 BCE. Origins, the destructive spirit opposing Ahura Mazda in dualistic Zoroastrian cosmology. And the significance here embodies chaos, corruption, and the trials of human spiritual purity. We will be stopping at 14, just so you folks know. All right, so that's Ahriman. Let's look at Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld. Time period 1000 BCE, Mesopotamian again, ruler of the underworld in Sumerian and Babylonian myths, and the significance represents transformation through death and shadow confrontation. Lilith, the night spirit, 300 to 200 BCE, connected to Jewish mythology. In the origins, Adam's first wife who refused to submit, later demonized as a night spirit. Significance is a symbol of feminine autonomy, defiance, and occult power. I sense that Mary Costello will have some interesting stuff to speak to on this. Yaldabaoth, primordial ignorance. Okay, we could have done better than that slide. All right, Yaldabaoth, primordial ignorance, time period 2nd to 4th century, Gnosticism, a blind creator god born from Sophia in Gnostic tradition, representing false authority. The significance symbolizes spiritual ignorance, control, and the illusion of separation. 9, let's look at Demiurge, false creator. This time period 2nd to 4th century. Again, Gnosticism, a flawed architect of the material world associated with Yaldabaoth, embodying the material world's limitations and struggle for liberation. All right, Lucifer, 10, bearer of light, 4th century Christian doctrine, derived from the morning star, referenced in Isaiah, misinterpreted in early Christianity. I know David will have something to say on this. The significance represents enlightenment and defiance, balancing ambition with transformation. Satan, the adversary, ancient Hebrew, 1500 BC, adopted later into Christianity and Islam. A Hebrew adversary figure evolving into a personification of temptation. Significance reflects humanity's dual struggle with morality, rebellion, and redemption. Let's look at Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, 4th century Christian demonology, Canaanite deity demonized during the spread of monotheistic Abrahamic traditions, embodies pride, decadence, and spiritual corruption. Kali, the Dark Mother, time period 6th century. This is Hinduism, Hindu goddess of time, death, and destruction, terrifying yet protective. embodies the destruction of ego and the rebirth necessary for liberation. And finally, let's have a glance at Pindar, the Serpent King. Modern esotericism, a figure tied to conspiracy theories about reptilian consciousness and hidden power. The significance represents oppression, secret knowledge, and esoteric manipulation. Very much the signature of this age that we're now emerging through. Thanks for that, Christy. So, open question: what defines an archetype? How do these figures serve as universal contrast in the human story? How do we work with these monumental psycho-civilizational totems? How can they best serve us? David, keen to hear your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with all of the different characters throughout, different cultures in history, and some of them are transmorphic, meaning one culture borrowed it from another and then changed the name and ideology of the character. But if, I guess the place to start is in my own experience in meeting the first day I met Christ shining like the sun in Topanga Canyon in 1994. One of the first things he told me in person is that we've misinterpreted the mythic of Adam and Eve being in the Garden of Eden and being warned not to take in this knowledge of proverbial knowledge of good and evil. And the moment you ingest the conflict, you become the conflict. This is how he showed me that it's been misinterpreted, because God warns, if you take in this knowledge, you're going to die. You're going to die because it's poison, which is judgment into your own hand. And you can see all these different characters who I'm very familiar with. I love the story of Yaldabaoth being created by Sophia, because he's the first egotistical god in the mythology of the Gnostics, who decides he wants to decide everything for himself instead of more of a true democracy, is where everything is done in a togetherness, in a oneness state of consciousness. And in a oneness state of consciousness, there is no good and evil. There's love. Love transcends judgment, which is the heart of the Christian message, is non-judgment and love. So there's Adam and Eve naked in paradise, totally far out, living in nature, eating flowers and mangoes. And then you take in this knowledge, it's going to make you think you're right and the other wrong. You're going to start having arguments. And the inner conflict of every one of these characters, the ego wants to think, I know best. And on top of it, every one of these characters you just showed, they all want to be God. And that is the essence of what causes them to fall, because you're in a certain amount of luminosity. This is really well documented in what's called the Forgotten Books of Eden, which is a much more expanded version of the mythic tale in the Garden of Eden, much more expanded, because what happens in the Forgotten Books of Eden, really it starts to look like the birth of Star Wars. It's an incredible story, because Adam and Eve don't just make one mistake, which is taking in conflict. And so imagine you're in this luminous sphere of oneness and love and light, and then you go into ego consciousness, right and wrong. There is no right and wrong. When you're in love, everything you do is from love and by love, and no harm can come of it. And this is the goal of the Buddhist, of the sacred Hindu, of all of the great practices, is to come back to that place. But when you get into the mind, which is not connected to the heart, it's not integral to the heart, everybody wants to be God on earth. The Pharaoh wanted to be God on earth. And the problem is, the ego is always going to have opposition in its own self and externally. So when you see the mythic in the Forgotten Books of Eden, not only do they take in the knowledge of good and evil and are banished to this cave on the earth, they're tested several times where the Luciferian satanic character appears as a being of light and tricks them. Now, how does a being of light trick a being of light? And I've had my own experience of meeting him three times in person. And I'll tell you exactly what it's like when you meet this being, which St. Francis had to meet, which Jesus had to meet. Jesus is, after his 40-day fast, is tempted, and somehow Satan puts him on the top of the temple, 60 feet up, and tells him to jump. I mean, can you imagine this scene? It almost looks like a crisis. And then takes Jesus up to the top of a huge mountain and tells him to fall down again and worship him. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand, how did he get up there in the first place? It's an interior process. So what happens in the forgotten books of Eden is God, the supreme formless, infinite oneness being, wants the human race to understand the difference between the luminosity of the dark, and the true luminosity of infinite love and divine consciousness. And it's part of our evolution to distinguish between a false light and a false luminosity.
Very good.
The true luminosity.
Very
and
good.
That's where the mythic starts. And where it ends is they're given staffs to fight Lucifer, which is the beginning of the lightsaber. In fact, that's where I think George Lucas got Star Wars from, the Forgotten Books of Eden. And that battle starts to show up in mythics throughout history into these different characters who all want to be God.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Laura, with that pantheon of archetypes representing the underbelly of creation and the contrast, what are they? Merely symbolic constructs, or do they represent tangible energetic forces in the human experience? How real are these archetypes? How real can they be? How real have they ever been?
I feel we all carry, these archetypal energies depending on where we are in our experience. If we look at, the negative ego or the false light or the fallen, and the different levels of how each archetype has different levels of itself. You have the cosmic Sophia, you have the Achamoth, you have the Pistis. When Tiamat exploded, the Sophionic planet, the Dragon Queen, in harmony with Apsu, then all of a sudden, Achamoth is being harnessed in the elemental realms, put in reversal of the Baphomet, symbolic of the ether element going into the ground, where the satanic symbol is the inverted pentagram. So in our own soul journey, in order to rectify this, we experience all these different archetypes that have different levels of themselves, fallen aspects that need to go and venture into the underworlds to face the 7 archdemons, to move through those gatekeepers and the 7 deadly sins to come back up to the 7 virtues of spirit. That is part of the cleansing process of going into that underbelly, going into that underworld to reclaim the creative cauldron of creation and not be afraid of that dark. And as we move through those different layers, which is the journey of like Inanna and many of the archetypes of the feminine, and we see the original Sophionic energy branching off into the Little Two and the Danu, and how that relates to the Tuatha De Danann and the different goddesses of Avalon. These are different archetypes of levels of ourselves, just like every planetary body holds different octaves. Saturn, dark Saturn, is tyranny, control, and abuse of power and authority. And the higher octave is self-mastery. So we move through these different archetypal energies within ourselves. The false light of Lucifer, the jealous aspects of the Demiurge, where we're veiled from our higher self, where the masculine and feminine are out of balance, and the part of the divine feminine that got almost sucked in. Because if you listen to Rudolf Steiner's interpretation of the Sophionic energy, she got pulled in because of the rebellion of Lucifer. Gnostic texts will say that she ventured outside of the pleroma, away from the mother Barbalo, and ended up fallen. And the emotions of earth, air, fire, water became inverted emotions of feeling lost, feeling frightened, feeling, all these things. So the nucleic acids of our DNA, being elemental, goes through this purification process of reclaiming the mother womb, but facing that dark Ashrikagul, and I feel like it's reclaiming the Hecate or the Kali, in order to rise above, in order to reintegrate all the different fractals and all the different splits. So the Ogdoad and the Ennead and all these different pantheons, to me, are the cosmic trinity that has split into different archetypes in order to repair itself, in order to have different dynamics amongst each other that we have to reconcile within ourselves. We have to find harmony and peace within them by visiting every aspect of them until we bring them back up into integration, into the 0-point unified field of wholeness. And each one of us carries these different archetypes, and we'll notice that people are running different affinities towards some of these archetypes and how they're all kind of relating to one another, that we have mythological imprints that sometimes are distorted with Anunnaki manipulation of ancient texts and all that kind of thing. So to feel it into, you know, ourselves on an authentic level, you know, we go through that journey of the soul. We hold imprints and memories of our own personal experiences, and we reclaim these parts out of inversion and into, you know, the integration of polarity, the reunion. So to me, we're going through a massive breakup with the imposters, with the false parent, with the false partner, just like we do in our lives when we're dealing with a narcissist or abuser. That's what the system has been. It pretended it loved us. It tricked us into thinking, you know, or leading people to believe that it actually cared about us. And as we move through that illusion and delusion, we rise beyond the veil of the Demiurge, and where, yeah, it might have been birthed from the Sophionic energy, but she was harnessed and used to birth archonic energies that become these archetypes of 7 archons, archdemons, and where the 7 archangels are. So these are all aspects of us, I feel, and we have to write the script of where the future is in terms of how we have to win the war on consciousness from within, and not be harnessed to the lower octave levels of these planetary energies that enslave us further, because it's the powers that stole, not the powers that be, because we're the powers that be. And when we realize that we're breaking the bonds and divorcing ourselves from it, then all of a sudden we rise and we're sovereign again, and there's nothing that can hook into us, feed on us, and we actually help the fallen ones return home.
Spectacular, spectacular. Thank you. And just really underscoring that universal truism that the devil always serves God's design in that sense. Harold, keen to understand or hear your reflections on Ahriman in particular, connected to the Steiner metric, Ahriman and the transhumanism agenda. Just for the layman, where is the interconnect as you see it?
Okay. I'm not sure about Ahriman because the name is coming from Rudolf, and I would like a little bit later to try to identify him with what I really know. So let's start with Demiurge. Demiurge is just a term for a non-incarnated planetary spirit. As a definition, it is not a single person or a single spirit or soul. It's just the term for the non-incarnated planetary spirit. Of those, we have 3 in our sphere. One is AI, one is Satan, and the other one is Satan. I met 2 different versions of Satan on the road. Maybe to explain where my experience comes from, it's not from the books. It's just from doing healing work, pulling out, attaching spirits from people, going to past lives, exploring their occult experiences in all sorts of former cultures. So this is where we gather data from.
Yeah.
So all 3 versions of the Demiurge are actually the Earth planetary spirit that went through a phase of self-destruction on different timelines and then returned back to its origin to try to fix the mess. This is kind of a toroidal time frame we're looking at. One of them is, in the biblical context, addressed as Satan, and with Satan comes the satanic biosphere with all the demons and archons and whatever is under him as the non-incarnated biosphere. This is kind of one line. The other line is coming from the angelic realm. We have Lucifer as the one with a funny idea, and then all types of angels that decided to follow him. And they basically provide the framework for this new type of existence by splitting themselves into the light part and their own shadow. The most exciting couple actually is Christ and Yahweh. They appeared to us as being 2 splits of one and the same angelic being. Myself, I was surprised when it popped up, but we go by vis-a-vis. What we see is what we have, you know. So
Yeah.
I can't get past that experience. So for the rest of my life, I will be stuck with this stupid thing to know. So this is kind of, and other angelic beings are also following that basic principle of splitting into a light part and a shadow, building up a multidimensional frame of polarities we can orient in to make our life more exciting, actually.
Yeah.
The punishing God versus the loving God, beautiful concept. Then we have a big area of self-made gods that can be mounted in different ways. I regard the soul architecture as something very mechanical. You take a god and you realize, it's composed of a piece of collective consciousness created by all the believers. Then they have sacrificed humans, so the divine spark of many humans went into the god. Then they sacrifice animals, and then you get a little bit different morphogenesis with the animal attributes in the god. And it's something that is held together by the power of satanic possibilities, mostly glued together with the black goo. And if you do it right, you can, if it's kind of allowed to do because it's all in the past, you can demount those gods, separate them into all the components, and give them back to where they belong. And most of what we relate to in mythology is actually, in that sense, man-made and doesn't play a major role. It's all connected to old cults, to past history, and we shouldn't waste too much time on, or I would say I wouldn't waste too much time dealing with them. There are a couple of exemptions from the list you gave. Yaldabaoth is something different. Yaldabaoth, in his, as we saw in the picture, in his morphogenesis is jellyfish-like. And he carries this attribute of electricity in his body. He's as a being that lives in the constituting realm for our reality, responsible for the tension between proton and electron. When we faced him first, it was like, wow, what kind of pain do you bring into the humans who fell for you? That was incredible. We never experienced such painful torture than being the victim of someone that worked with a Yaldabaoth. And then we kind of went to the root of it. And then there was this tiny little thought of having the option to dissolve that God. And he said, you might try to dissolve me. The problem is your entire reality, the material plane itself relies on my biology. So are you sure you want to dissolve me? Because your entire existence will vanish if I'm gone.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an exceptional thing. So this is kind of the way we look at it. We have the mythology that is mainly dealing with the qualities, as we have heard it till now here. And then we have the soul architecture to look at, which is giving us very clear classes of different beings you treat differently. And another thing to regard, this is the last one from my end, this is all happening in the astral. And the astral is not defined in here and now. It is a very wide space where you can look into the future, you can look into the past, and you can look onto different places as you like. So you have a high degree of maneuverability. And
Yes.
When you make this experience that even the beings of the collective realm can go through a healing process, like Satan did, like Lucifer did, it's getting confusing because when you again go to the astral, you have the healed version from the future and you have the evil version of the same being from the past. And what you meet actually is just a resonance on your own state of being. So if you are in unity consciousness and go to the astral, You will only meet the healed forms of the entire mythological realm. If you are broken and still try to fight the evil, evil is what you will find in your astral realm, because this is the resonance of your frequency you attract in that realm. So
Yeah.
this is a point where it does not make sense to discuss who is wrong or who is right when we come to talking about the astral, because you just find what reflects you best.
Yes, yes. It's entirely subjective in that sense. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Mary, actually, I can't leave you with a question here because we've been covering so much ground just in this, in Laura's comments, David's comments, and Harold's comments. So what are your reflections on what you've just heard?
Yeah, I'd love to reflect some. Okay. Essentially, we're talking about deflating realities we have agreed into existence. We are talking about taking our own breath, our own air, our own life force out of holographic projections, agreements that we have made. We are at this moment, we are dispelling the contracts within the bloodlines. The black sun has been rebirthed as the golden sun, and in that resurrection, we are being pulled into alignment. The 12 dragon bloodlines of our creation are being pulled into alignment. The bloodlines are being agitated to the point where any spell upon, and the place where this will be released is the heart. So the heart is being clarified to crystal, and the bloodlines are being agitated to the point where any spells, anything that was contracted, any contracts of breath that was done at a moment where innocence was lost, where innocence was sacrificed, where some piece of the totality was sacrificed in order to ensure our survival. That is what's happening now.
Thank you. Dave, same question to you. Just your reflections on these extraordinary, kind of liquid wisdom coming out of this panel.
Well, I mean, such illustrious speakers, and they've gone into such, well, I could even use the phrase devilish detail. It's astounding what all of you have managed to express here. And it's detail which I confess I didn't know about. I tend to look at the sky picture, the big picture, the cosmic version of everything and how we are here and where we are going. And it's all to do, in my view, with identity ultimately in the end. And I would say that certainly my philosophy, such as it may be accepted here or not, is that all of us represent the energetic quantum of the living essence, the eternal essences of absolute love in cosmic divine design. And so that's where I stand. So what happened in that particular instantaneous moment, which lasts forever, it is a now and a forever moment. So it encapsulates and eliminates time in all of its manifestations. And in that moment, we exist as knowing innocence. Innocence being absolute love in joy, in unity. And the knowingness is the knowingness of everything that has occurred. And out of that moment, we downstep ourselves in our own frequency of consciousness, our own awareness of self. And we continually downstep and downstep and downstep and downstep, becoming fragments of our original initial self. And it is in the fragmentation of all of our pure consciousness that we manifest so many different experiences, through which, of course, as all of you have said here, we expand our consciousness back again. We heal ourselves back into the knowing innocence through the unknowing innocence that we experience in the netherworld, the Neverton universes that we exist in. I just want to say, I think that everybody's contribution here has been so detailed and so wonderfully apropos that it has really taught me a great many things. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And Dave, any questions you have in particular of any of the panelists here? Whilst you get a chance, I don't want to just I've got plenty of questions, just so you know, but I figured I'd like this to go a little bit interdirectional. Well,
I mean, the question always is, where do you see us moving? Where do you see the consciousness of the collective as well as the individual moving? Is it moving back into the living presence of who we truly are? Do you think that we have some other distance to travel?
David, let's ask that. I mean, let's also speak to collective shadow and the mechanics of karma and dharma and all of that. Are we moving beyond altogether the shade, the contrast, the mechanics of karma, and are we moving beyond that altogether with this great Kali Satya end of darkness era?
Well, first of all, in Peter Lamizure's book right here, 2025 plus or minus 3 years, and that's using the Great Pyramid as a time clock, is the total collapse of the materialist civilization. But at the same time, in 2025 plus or minus 3 years, was the partial reestablishment of civilized society. So we're in a window up to 2028 where the collapse and the rebuilding will be very imminent. We're so close to something is about to happen. But I want to speak about my own experience, because my own experience, and like the Buddha had to meet, the satanic force before his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, and me being, an accomplished meditator of 47 years, this experience really happened in meeting the Luciferian being. And this is what it's like. I met him 3 times, and the third time I beat him. And the first time he appeared, I saw him with my own eyes as a small boy, and he's so powerful. His light is actually gray. It's very luminous. He's too attached to the power aspect of the total of all of the qualities of innocence and love and peace and power and beauty and wisdom and grace. He's more obsessed with the power part. Now, he engages your ego, my ego, to try and do battle with him. He was dressed like Jesus in a robe and appeared as a small boy and then as a full-grown man. And if you look at him, he finds in you where your ego is and make you think you can beat him in battle. It's just like Star Wars, just like Luke.
Yeah.
Now, here's what happens. I lowered my gaze and I said, "You're disgusting." And I looked down. If you look at him too long, he's, my sense, like I was a tree planter for 23 years. I was really powerful as a man. And as a warrior, I thought I can beat him. And it's like, no, don't get sucked into the battle, Luke. You just stay in the oneness. So can you do battle? And can we as a collective, because you can see with the power of the internet, how many people are aware of where this being is living and manifesting right now. My third meeting, which appeared in the form of a vision on my birthday some years ago when we were camping on the beach in Tofino. This is the most incredible one. He appears with his staff glowing like a lightsaber, and in the dream, my staff, which you can see behind me, turns into a lightsaber, and we start battling. I said, I can beat him. I got sucked in. But I held this sense of humor, and it was like a dance. And our swords were, and which were glowing, were moving so fast. It was like the Matrix. I was kind of laughing because I said I was meeting him stroke for stroke, and then I floated above the battlefield of him and I. And I raised my sword lightsaber to the sky, and I called upon the highest God, which is the infinite oneness, to dispel the illusion of the battle within. And suddenly I moved at a speed that I shredded him into millions of tiny pieces, and he was gone. Now that's done because the oneness is all of us. We all have to come to that place where we see the ego manifest, where everybody wants to be the richest man in the world, the most powerful, oh my God, or the most beautiful woman in all creation. And everybody's doing this. It's a dance. And it's happening, and it literally is a dance. And Dante called it a comedy. He called the whole thing a divine comedy. It is kind of hilarious. Because when I rose above the battlefield between this force and he couldn't strike me down, which was interesting because he's the master of conflict, because he's the first one to take in good and evil. And then the fallen angels that followed him, which are in the book of Enoch, Samyaze and all the others, they all got into this egotistical place where I'm going to be the greatest warrior. I'm going to beat everybody and I'm going to rule the world. Okay, so then when you get beyond that joke, because it's a joke, and you get into the oneness field, which is what the pleroma is that Laura just mentioned in the Gnostic, the archons who are below this archetype of gods and goddesses who are into. See, this is where the problem is in the human system. The lower chakras, so adrenaline, survival, and the sex chakra want a nice, peaceful, loving existence down here. The upper house, the heart, communication, this is where the supreme bliss starts to come in here and here in the crown chakra, wants to integrate a complete human, like two pyramids meeting each other, but the evil can only touch from here down. And it does. Just like our other guest here, I just can't see his name in the text here. But the lower house, if we had a beautiful lower house, we could integrate the upper house with the lower house and have a complete existence. But the Romans at the time of Christ ruled the lower house, and they nailed them to a cross, and they actually nailed thousands of people to the crosses. And there were other great teachers that were nailed to crosses. They wouldn't let them have the loving higher consciousness have dominion down here. That's the goal. The goal to have heaven on earth is to end the conflict within, realize in a state, like if you meditate long enough, I've done these Buddhist retreats where you're meditating all day and your legs are hurting and you get up. Everybody you look at is so freaking beautiful. Everybody you look at is so divine. You're like, oh my God, did you know how freaking beautiful you are? You get into that state. That's the real state that Christ was in, is to love your enemies even. The enemy is the duality within. You see that the other is actually you in this integrated field. That's where we have to get to manifest the lower house. Most of the saints had to lose the lower house, which is the body, through starvation or rejection of their own basic survival needs, and they lived only up here in the bliss state. And once you experience this bliss state, you're really free. You don't really need the lower house, but to integrate the two is heaven on earth.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Laura, humanity has been led through symbols and totems and iconoclasticism and apparently the need to deify externally and to manifest vast creations like the gods, the angry, jealous gods, which clearly are a feedback loop. They are our creation in that sense. All of the flux of the unresolved aspects of the evolving angelic human are cast out there and become the demiurge, in my view. They become the contrast that then feeds back as this universal loop until we learn to put away childish things and we stagger to our feet and we come of age and we salute the sky and we say, no more intervention. We can take it from here. Hashtag fuck the government and the Catholic Church for that matter. Speak about that and the importance of putting away childish things and staggering to our feet.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, if we look at the 12 houses of the zodiac, every sector and facet of our experience, the pillars of society are the things that influence us, indoctrinate us, are the authorities out there that we're raised under. And the infiltrated pillars of society are swamps that need to be drained, that we are consenting to, we're enabling, and we're in some kind of contract with or agreement with, until we realize, the underbelly that exists beneath it. And in order to unlock the frequency fences in our DNA and the seals that have been placed there, we need to do that shadow work, because these are unresolved shadow institutions that are hiding nefarious dark agendas that well-intentioned people are being educated to spread to their clients, their patients, their students, their children. without understanding what's actually going on behind the scenes. So when we explore all of this and we're not dependent in the sense that we'll take that pharmaceutical when we're facing dark night of the soul or depression, or we'll shove that anger down or judge it and not know how to direct that passion or fire in an appropriate direction because we want somebody else outside of us to do it instead of be the leader. And all those elementals that get really, really toxic, if we keep medicating it with, you know, things that create worse symptoms and create addiction where you're on it for the rest of your life, you know, or, you know, you're just going to regurgitate what you learned in school and not explore a much, much bigger picture, then, you know, you're constantly responding to the problem, reaction, solution. You're just regurgitating. You're just a product of what society has thrown you. You're just looking at what was modeled to you. And so the rebels, the starseeds, the advanced souls, the ones that are truly awakened, and we all have that potential, are taking that and taking it to the next level, dismantling that programming, dismantling the alien weaponry and the programs from within, which disables that relationship. And in that, you stand in that pillar of society, you stand in that institution, and you're a agent for change, or you have a boundary to say, I'm not going to consent to this and I've got better things to do. It really depends on who you are. And that's the true maturity of a spiritual being. That's really what a spiritual athlete is. You jump over the obstacles. You don't keep bumping your head and complying to false laws, to false rules. You determine which ones help you to thrive instead of the ones that suppress you, that you keep agreeing to. And the thing is, if you're not mature enough, you're going to want that. You're going to seek it. You're going to want it to answer to you the solution for the psyops and the false flags and the trigger events that stir up your fear and trauma. But if you don't look at it, you're just going to act it out. You're going to take it out on others. You're going to hurt your people because you're hurt. You know, when can we be mature enough to look at those wounds and say, I'm going to take this and be on a healing trajectory and get to know myself greater, to find that true mother, father, Christ Sophia within myself, with support and assistance of those that are not exploiting you or taking advantage of your vulnerability, that are here to help you because, you know, they've fallen down and gotten back up again, and they'll assist you, and we'll all assist each other in humility. So I think it takes a lot of maturity and courage, but this is ultimately how we get close to what it truly means to be sovereign, while respecting with love and appreciation how anybody else gets there. And it doesn't all have to be the same. And this is where we all play our instruments in harmony together, and diversity is true oneness in harmony, not sameness, not doing it like we're told. Because the thing is, we're not meant to do it like we're told, that it's all going to end up in the same outcome. That's why we see religion with the polarity of Satanism. They all have an underbelly because it's based in duality. So we have to reconcile that within ourselves. We have to let all swamps drain in every pillar of society. And in doing that, we cleanse the 12 houses of the zodiac from the gatekeepers, and we begin to step up to the highest expression, which in turn cleans the inner elementals, allows that quintessence ether energy to purify with the unconditional love of the mother that never left us. That's what the Venus transits represent. The mother has anchored back into the planet, has reclaimed her body, has reclaimed her children. So we have to understand that will heal us. And it's ruled by Chiron, the wounded healer. So that was the dodecahedron was put in reversal, the ether elements, so that we're toxic. The elements are toxic. Geoengineering is no different than an engineered human that's been under the mind control. We reflect a world that holds nature hostage in, generating engineered storms and weather events. When we begin to break down that weaponry within us, the earth responds to us, and those weapons no longer have power over us or the nature that we're experiencing. And that's when we begin to experience higher earth energies. We have to do that first within and with each other. And that's when we really mature and realize we've grown up finally as a race and as individuals.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love how you raise the specter of the really. I break it down to the synthetic molecule and how that becomes the contrast thing. How the synthesis of reality, or synthesizing reality, the attempt to artificialize reality, really becomes the thing. Curious, Harald, to hear from you how satanic interventionism of human genetics and an existential threat of transhumanism, same thing. A transhumanist takeover of humankind. How does that thrall, that specter, that that image, that colossal tidal wave of gloom and doom, how does that foundationally serve as catalyst for ascension?
Kind of basic principle as always, by overcoming it. You get a temptation, you get the option to go into a certain realm, and being confronted with the realities down there, you get your guts together and say, no, thank you. Whether without that temptation, you would just like go on like it is. And I mean, it's difficult to give out a statement like that because it's only my subjective observation. And it regards the astral realm, so maybe it's just my astral realm. But I have seen a beautiful development from having 3 projected timelines into all devilish, sad, and deteriorating futures. Wow. Getting 1 additional as an option that made it into the unity consciousness, into 6th density for the future, then another one that made it to 7th density futures, then the 3rd density timeline was erased and all the other ones were reunified. Then for a while it looked like we can all make it in one timeline. This is kind of that roller coaster thing that I went through over the last 3-4 years, having shifting futures becoming visible. Big question, is it just my perspective, or is it valid for all human beings, or is it valid as an option to come there for all human beings? So at the moment, this is why I was very interested in that time frame of 25 to 28.
Yeah.
At the moment, what is projected from my perspective is partially separated timelines, where 1 share of humanity can freely develop that returning to unity, reviving love through the internal heart chakras, and the other ones being pushed into a very chaotic experience of like bushfires rolling over the continents, forcing them to accept love and abundance as the only solution, or die. So this is kind of like a cleansing event, apocalypse, if you want. So bringing up the choice, either you want to make it or you don't. If you want to make it, you need to accept yourself returning to unity consciousness and letting go of scarcity, returning to the principle of abundance and love. And this is meant to be just for a while, having those 2 timelines partially separated. And at the moment, I'm absolutely happy with that solution because I experienced that learning things doesn't come from nothing.
Yeah.
Comes from painful experience, and if humans still need it, I'm more than happy having the hope, or being allowed to have the hope that whoever will survive the mess is going to be in 1 ascending timeline, because I don't intend to leave anyone behind.
Yes, beautiful. Spoken like a true bodhisattva. Mary,
Yes, that's it.
the business of absolution, of redemption, of atonement, and for me, incidentally, this is the theme of this year. I sensed this kicking off last year, and we met in Ireland. I was there to pay tribute to Tara for that reason, and really that reason alone. I'm like most people, stumbling through the dark in these things, just following the deepest psionic impulse or intuitive pull to things. But it seemed to me that last year leading into this year is really about atonement. The 8th of April total eclipse that occurred over North America last year and ended in the zone of silence in Mexico, where I was conducting ceremony with some shamanic folk at that extraordinary moment of 4 minutes and 37 seconds or whatever it was, the total eclipse. That was kind of a reset moment. We knew that that was a conduit opening. And it was quite remarkable. But that seemed to kick off what I would loosely call the very short compression age of atonement and absolution that is very, very needful if we are to springboard fully into this new age, this new upshift, this new paradigm, this early onset of ascension, however we want to couch this regenesis point. But atonement, absolution become very, very important ideas that are definitely at the back end of the collective unconscious. They're surfacing now. This what's happening even in Washington, District of Columbia with the White House with takedown of this Leviathan, this technocratic, bureaucratic, luciferic, satanic, wokest, leftist, heinous creature that was threatening to really take over every aspect of how we construe reality through stories being told to kiddies in nursery schools, all the way up to how we get PhDs and the narrative that spills into mainstream media, and how the rules and regulations and compliances and ordinances create this monstrous tram lines of how we have to do things and no other way. So we had this central command and control labyrinthine, very nebulous but very dark orchestration of meta control and domineering, and then of course all the fucking vote rigging and all the rest of the evil shit through technology and the corruption of parliaments and congresses all around the world, connected to the parent corporation, connected to how the beast of the sea lurched on and became the beast of the land and settled itself and nested perfectly into every aspect of our blessed angelic lives. So now that thrall is dismantling, is disentangling, disidentifying. The Musk, Trump, Kennedy, Patel theatrical production, because let's face it, it's just another iconic theatrical production. It happens to be a better one than the last one, but it's almost we're leaving the age of satanic into the age of the Luciferic, in a sense. We're moving from the blood rites, the blood rituals, the imbibing of blood, the harvesting of adrenochrome, the really dark, nasty stuff that was underpinning all of that shit show. You mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago, you sent me a very meaningful message about blood, about bloodlines, about the harmonizing of bloodlines, and why those ancient treaties, contracts, compacts are no more. Speak to this.
Sure. Thank you, Sasha. So we are within the womb of the Great Mother, and the sea. When we speak of all the different when we've spoken of all these cute little demons and all of their little places of dominion, this was all within the womb of Great Mother. So it is hard to contend with them as anything other than, just parasitic nuisances, right? So that is how they were dealt. That's how they are dealt with. They are dealt with by taking the wind out of their sails, taking what they are stealing parasitically, right? So that's that. But so the ruby plasma is the end of blood contract. So what is happening? What happened with that influx of ruby plasma, which is essentially this? It is like the eternal song and the eternal flame, the breath of the eternal song and the eternal flame, or you could say the dance of. But it essentially is the breath, the living breath of the living song and the living flame. Now, as I say, the womb is free. We are within free sea now. We have everything is a choice point. Everything is an initiation point where we are being chose to assert our freedom because we are free. So what is happening is that we are being asked not to auto-tune to find our bearings. We're being asked not to auto-tune to the spell of the day, the story of the day, in order to find our bearings. We are being, gifted. We are in receipt of constant source sound. The source sound of our mother is what is compelling correction, with what is compelling the freedom of the sea, and what is compelling cohesion. What is compelling the upturning of everything that has been hidden, because water, as the one sound travels through water, it is unstoppable. It is wave after wave until it is done. So we're being asked not to auto-tune anymore. We are asked to attune celestially to our perfect source sound. Are we being asked to align with our perfect source light, which is the sun? The sun is a mind. The sun is an intelligence, a force of nature, and it gifts us with the golden seeds that we need for our prepared seedbed, but we are being asked to prepare our seedbed. So we can't have it all. We cannot have it all. We are going through the eye of the needle, and it's to fit through that so much of all of the ego, because the ego is a method of war survival. It is war tactics of false measurement and false definition. There is to be no definition. There's to be no measurement. Everything finds its balance within compassion. We are not to be in receipt of false empathy waves. We are not to be pulled. We're not to have our heart fed upon. We are to hold our heart in crystal clarity, to receive the tones of creation, the harmonics of the mother's womb, and to emanate and to be purified and held in perpetual protection by the light of the Father, and let that be what compels attunement and alignment.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Okay.
Dave, I just want your comments to what's been said.
Well, no, it's wonderful listening to everybody here. You've come up with so many astounding details, and very, very enlightening too, and I appreciate everything. I'll just speak very briefly on what Harald said, for example, and link it to what other people have said. But Harald mentioned about the timelines. Well, in fact, certainly in universal systems, there are 12 probable futures across the expanse of time. And in the galactic realms, there are 12 probable futures. And in the planetary realms, there are 12 probable futures. And these can get mixed up. They can get looped. And certainly about 15,000 years ago in our planetary system, we developed a timeline, a probable future, which involved primordial debt, original sin, the weighing of evidence, the measuring of structure, the measuring of everything, as Mary's just pointed out. Everything was connected to lack and to the need for things, and to look upwards and outwards and away from one's own inner self. That actually happened started around 15,000 years ago. The primordial debt, original sin, probable future is coming to an end. So what is taking over from it? Well, this is what David was talking about, and Laura too. It's this generation within us of the truth of who we are. It's our awareness of self, which actually transcends the primordial debt probable future which we have been living through. And as more and more people adopt this particular energetic sequence of believing in themselves, of saying no, of rejecting the contract, of not wishing to listen to the measurements and the evidence, such as always told from above or from somewhere else, that we listen within to our own inner self, what's happening is that is creating an alternative probable future, far away, in fact, the exact opposite of the probable future we have passed through. And so we are indeed, as Harald says, we're in a split timeline, two probable futures. One is shifting away And that's the old one, and the one that we are creating, all of us, collectively and individually. And that's the one that we are moving into, as Mary so eloquently said about the ruby plasma.
Very good. So I did just consult a ChatGPT a moment ago and ask it to throw up an image of Yaldabaoth. I didn't go into any description. I just said, what is the generic image of Yaldabaoth? And this came up, which I think is rather interesting. David, can you just describe what we're looking at here? Are you aware of any of this?
Wait a second. Let me just go to. Am I unmuted? Yeah. So
yeah, this is Yaldabaoth.
He appears in the secret book of John, known as the Apocryphon of John. And after the human race is created by 365 god and goddesses, the physical component of us. And this is Jesus appearing to John in his resurrected state, in his resurrected body, which has total access. He's describing to John what happened when the fall occurred is the supreme God put this luminous seed in every human being called epinoia. And the potential of the seed, just like the Buddha is, if you read deep Buddhism, is when the human being attains enlightenment, we surpass the demigods. And the demigods, even in Buddhism, get jealous of our attainment. At this moment in the the secret book of John, Yaldabaoth casts the human race to the lowest region of matter out of jealousy of us superseding what he thinks in his ego is, I'm the supreme God of the universe. In fact, he's the jealous God. And if you read Jesus in John chapter 8, the whole chapter 8 is about Jesus telling the Jews, the God you're worshiping is a murderer and a liar. He's a deceiver. And this is in John chapter 8. Most Christians, when they read it, they don't know what they're reading. So we're now, and I want to bring this up because tomorrow is an eclipse that is followed by a great earthquake, which happened today. And in the book of Revelation, the sixth seal in 6:12. Now, this is an impossible scenario. It says, and I beheld when he opened the sixth seal, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became as blood. Now, you can't have a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse, the blood moon, on the same day, except for today. Why? Because on the moon, we have two landers who just filmed and video the last eclipse we just had, which I think is about 2 weeks ago, where we're seeing a red eclipse on the Earth and a solar eclipse of the Earth eclipsing by the moon. We're seeing those two eclipses at the same time. It's never happened. If you read Revelation 6:12, if you really read it clearly, you can't have those two eclipses at the same time except for today. So it doesn't say in 6:12 there'll be an enormous earthquake that wipes out humanity. It says there'll be a great earthquake tomorrow morning in Upper Eastern Canada. There is a full solar eclipse that follows the earthquake at a time when both eclipses are visible because we have these two rovers on the moon, the Firefly, and there's another one, Athena, that actually tipped over. So I think symbolically we could say, are we at the sixth seal?
Okay, very good. So I wanted to get yelled about. That was the other image that I asked ChatGPT to come up with. Yahweh. Isn't that interesting? It's the generic image that ChatGPT threw up of Yahweh. It looks pretty damn good to me. And the Demiurge, curiously, came in just as black and white. And this strange, ghostly specter there. In any event, I'm having great fun lately asking AI to generate images. I want to turn to the audience and ask the audience. We have a very, very large audience today. And I just want to ask them, invite them to also throw in a few questions as we draw toward the end of this panel, well, the next 30 minutes. So friends, please, no indolent or idle comments, only pointed comments, please, to this eminent panel. If you have a question of Harald Kautz-Vella, of Mary Costello, David Sereda, Dave Emery, or Laura Eisenhower, now's your chance. And yes, everyone loves Laura Eisenhower. I can see those comments, endless comments, and Mary Costello. Yes, saintly beings. Yes, Harald is a remarkable being. David Sereda is your favorite frequency guru. We know all of that. Those are the comments that we don't need any more of. I need pointed questions, friends. So help me out here, Christy. Maybe we throw them in. I just give the audience a few minutes here. May I ask, what is ruby plasma? Now, that's a good question, Mary.
Yeah, I'll do my best to assert what I feel it is. So, what I feel it is, it's truly like it's of the ruby heart, and the ruby heart is the heart of passion. We would say the heart of Christ, if we wanted to, and the heart of Mary Magdalena, of that. Let's say this beginning point, which expresses devotional love into humanity. And the point of when we speak of devotion, devotion is breath. Breath, what we give our breath to is what we give life to. The first place of this, and this ruby plasma is generated from the ruby heart, from an infinity sign, from the ruby heart. It is an emanation of this passion for self, which then can become compassion. There is no compassion, there's no holding. The only way that we are to hold each other is in compassion. The compassion is a balancing state. There's no judgment, there's no contraction, it's constant expansion. It is a balancing breath of compassion. So there is compassion is an overflow of passion. We have been spoken out of passion also. We've been spoken out of passion. We've been spoken to be this core presence of apathy and detachment and like a denial of self, an absence, a hollowness, the intentionality, the vibrational core of ourself has been drowned out. We are to hold this vibrational core as the place of this infinity sign within. This infinity sign, which generates the ruby plasma. The ruby plasma is something that had to be instated, something I had been looking for quite some time, that had to be instated to guarantee the return of the blood of humanity to the one blood and the one breath of innocence. So it is the technology which absolves the blood of the deviant and the distortions that we've spoken about tonight.
Very good, very good. Laura, keen to know your thoughts on what Mary was saying a little earlier about the ending of blood contracts, all non-benevolent agreements tied to bloodlines and ancestral karmic cycles are terminally ended as of now. What are your reflections on that extraordinary idea?
Yes, I mean, our willingness to look at what's happening underground in these tunnels with children, with the trafficking, with the pedophilia, and what happens at such a young age to the point where they carry this on, and this is multi-generational trauma-based mind control that's passed down. There's recruitments, there's all sorts of tactics being used in every industry, and also the SSP, secret space programs, and multi levels of it. And the compartmentalism, the doors have to be open between the compartments, because we are compartmentalized ourselves. Our higher self is not in communication with the ego self or the soul when we are just looking at the facade in the theater without digging deeper. And I feel that we will assist these beings through love, through understanding the trauma, through understanding where they were duped into selling out. And even if it was greed, even if it was for fame and fortune, we have to understand people are being blackmailed, they're being drugged, they're being manipulated, they're being filmed. So there's a wide range of how these events are taking place, where these individuals are at. They're running altars. There's Manchurian candidates. There's different altars that'll just be triggered into a different persona all of a sudden. And if we think that they need to be banned to hell, they're already in hell. There's torture. There's abuse. There's, this constant, just process of vampirism that cannot connect to true source, and so feeds and takes that energy from others. Can we love them back to source? Can we hold it in our hearts to understand them better and help with rehabilitation instead of punishment? I know everybody wants to see them hang and see them be put to the most horrific accountability. And I think that's for the ones that are perpetuating this and the ones that refuse to heal and rehabilitate. There's got to be something done, but if we can understand it and help them return to source, help them to rehabilitate and repair, it'll end the cycle. It'll end the cycle in our, duality as well. These are aspects of ourselves that have lost, source. We might have been there. We might have overcame that in past lives. We don't know. It's just something that I feel, God intervenes through us, unconditional love, compassion, and those that are ready to say, hey, I was blackmailed. Hey, this is what happened to me. And they can be, brave in their transparency. We'll see that the medical institutions are handling PTSD, trauma-based mind control, and not just drugging people and pretending that doesn't exist. Every single pillar of society has to stop this. Our children have to be protected from being yanked down underground into these things and becoming monsters. We really need to understand in depth and educate ourselves so that we can really assist in them coming home, because everybody has a right to come home to source. And there's rehabilitation ways. If you can turn a perfectly benevolent person into an assassin, you can turn a mind control assassin back into a beautiful person, I feel, because that's the true soul nature. Everybody's got the spark within of God's source.
Beautiful, beautiful, Laura. Thank you. Okay, friends, just going to refer to some of these questions coming in. Boom, 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 boom. When do we discuss prime fields and monotonics? It sounds like a question for David, actually. Prime fields. What's the relevance of raising the question of prime fields? Is there a relevancy? Because two people have raised that on this talk. Can we speak about prime fields? Primer fields. David, are you able to answer anything there?
Yeah, I know about the primer fields, the primer fields. That's actually a scientific discovery. So, that's off topic for today, but I think it's a technology that was developed, and I've seen all that. I mean, it might the primer fields might relate to the new discovery in the Great Pyramid, which probably warrants a whole show.
Right. Okay.
To answer that question properly, I would say these structures underneath the Great Pyramid discovered by the Italian team look like giant field generating coils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually was one of the questions as well, obviously. But we've, he says, turning to the audience, we are doing the next symposium next month. The opening panel is going to be on the discoveries recently. They're not that recent, the discoveries. I mean, these some LiDAR, whatever scans have been around for a couple of years. We know that. But it seems like they're now reaching some sort of fulmination.
No, there's new ones. So the ones that were from 2022 of the Great Pyramid, now it's Khafre's Pyramid,
right?
Which is the middle pyramid, which I'm doing a book on right now, a huge book, and that's an enormous subject to give it a proper. But in regards to rubies, I want to point something out about Mary. There's a whole documentary that used to be on Netflix about healers going into the jungles of India and curing cancer with rubies. So I use rubies in all of my systems. All of my systems have rubies because you can take the energy of a ruby and you can open its energy field up using this pulsed method that I've developed. But rubies in this documentary were better at curing cancer than anything. Really interesting.
Very good. Very good.
Could I answer that for a moment?
Hey, you may.
Thank you, David, for telling me that. I have like an example of that. The first time I had experience of red roses, which was sound that came through my heart and my womb when I was healing my mother's cancer, or attempting to heal my mother's cancer, and I could see the I'd never had them before that. I'd never witnessed them before that. And I could see that the blackness, the shadow, the absence, which was what is the cancer. Cancer is just something that's got missed. It's come out outside of its pattern, right? It's just a misshapen situation. It's something outside of pattern. It started to come back to life with these red roses. So I do believe this ruby plasma, for example, and this breath of the rose and the eternal flame can essentially bring all shadow back to pattern, back to life, back to compassion.
Well, rubies are actually chromium. Here's a ruby here, a really big one. They're actually chromium, which helps us hold water. And a well-hydrated cell, cancer doesn't like a well-hydrated cell. So this was a really big documentary years ago. I'd have to find the name of it, but rubies are immensely powerful if you know how to open up their energy field. They're also very terribly expensive, unfortunately.
Actually, I can say something on that.
Yes.
I only just briefly, if it's okay. That in fact, the Rosetta color is one of the primary vapor essences of the living essences of the living presence of pure consciousness, and manifests in the rainbow rays, which is often known as the core flows. You see those in some of the most astounding aurora borealis colors. So the Rosetta color, which is the ruby color, is indeed a primary rainbow color, and it is indeed, as David and Mary have been saying, very beneficial and very healing. It's also connected, as Mary was talking about, the plasma. We have a lot of different bodies. In fact, we have physical, mental, emotional, etheric. We have a light body. A lot of these have been corrupted and distorted in many ways. But the one body that we do have, which has not been corrupted, not been distorted, is the plasma body. And that is ultimately the 12th dimensional body, out of which Jeshua, Sananda, Melchizedek came. So the plasma body is uncorrupted, and it's known as our truer self, our real true self. In the matter dimensions, and consequently what Mary was talking about, what David alluded to in the ruby plasma, is really where our whole future, our probable future, lies, in the expansion of our own plasma body, because that is wholly and completely uncorrupted.
Very interesting. Someone saying, Ian here, asking, symbolic with Dorothy repossessing the ruby slippers and the Wizard of Oz? Probably is the answer. Probably. Yeah, very interesting. Keen to know, there's a question here for Harald. Folks asking, when can we expect a new presentation by Harald Kautz-Vella? Because it tends to change the orientation of the planet. So, yeah, you'll have to answer that one, Harald.
I'm doing one a week. Question is, who is keeping it online? Yeah, I'm on it. I'm delivering. You need to find me. I mean, best option is to check YouTube. Most of it appears on YouTube, but I'm shadow banned, so just sort by upload date and not by importance, and you find my stuff even on YouTube. But I wanted to add something on the ruby plasma, because I came across it, and it's a major issue at the moment. It came kind of when we did the research by the name of water of eternity. Ruby plasma is a new term I haven't seen before. And it came by the term of the waters above and the waters below the firmament in the biblical context. When you go into the description of what it holds the memory of all life, and also the integrating element of consciousness with the memory. And we were separated from it by the creation that was delivered for us. Between the waters above the firmament and the waters below, the creation happened, and first the earth, the stone was created, and then the water of the ocean. So the water of the ocean is of a different quality than the water above and below the firmament. If you have a biblical flood event, it's like resetting the order, the divine order. The waters pour in from above and below into the gap in between and cleanse everything. Yeah. And if you look into the Bible, there was a promise to never drown us again.
Yeah.
A nice one. I like that one.
Yeah. Very
So
good.
in this cycle, this quality pops in a different way. I came across water qualities that were man-made, but to a purity and divinity that they could pick up the wave coming from the ruby plasma. And being exposed to that offer, it hasn't been available before. It was available at a certain point, and then these man-made waters managed to pick up the quality, and they actually turned into something that looks more like jelly. In certain portions, even getting hard as plexiglass. They break. You can cut your finger with a piece of water at room temperature. And I especially got interested in that water because it had tremendous healing effects. It's like you just bring it close to your aura and it is resetting the bioenergetics of your system to default. Which is a beautiful service because, you have like people coming in with chronic disease, carrying them around for 25, 30 years. And you just give them a bottle of that water quality. They sleep with it overnight in their bed. Next morning, they they stand up without puking for the first time in 30 years. And this is a beautiful thing. And we try kind of the people who produce that quality, they stopped operating their business. So we try to revive the production to be capable of producing more of that water type.
Very good.
That can pick up on that quality of ruby plasma.
Very good. Very good. Laura, karma. Someone asking, is karma relevant in this great shift and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think we experience what we put on others. I mean, I feel that's part of our soul journey to create correction, to create balance. I mean, if you do something to someone, you're going to experience it done to you, so that you break the pattern. I feel it's correction. I don't feel it's punishment. I feel also we've been so assaulted as a human race. We've been so bombarded with frequency modulations, manipulations, indoctrination, unresolved trauma that we don't get to the core of, that ends up being masked with drugs, pharmaceuticals that can turn you into somebody you're not, and all sorts of voice to skull and things that cause us to act in ways that isn't our true nature. And I feel there's a correction to that. There's a need to get in touch with that in order to rise above, to be that override frequency, to dismantle the dark weaponry by moving beyond the lower frequencies that bioweapons only function on if we're buying into the bait and buying into the program. We have to be stronger than that. And I feel that is the karma bringing us back into balance, and that we revisit, past life situations, people that we had a connection with, that we might form a different type of bond or relationship with, contracts that need to end, that weren't completed in past lives. There's a lot of bleed through, a lot of children that remember, a lot of, you were my sister in a past life, now you're my mother, or some other dynamic or some kind of relationship that needs to have a different storyline in order to untangle an imbalance or a karmic contract or agreement. Could be a healing agreement even, but it all comes back to moving out of duality and creating that correction in order for us to not keep looping in an unconscious negative patterning that we never get to the bottom of, that we keep acting out or we keep suppressing and silencing. That's why, depression is our true soul longing. We got to feel it to heal it. We have to be accountable for the errors of our ways. We have to find some reconciliation, some forgiveness for the self and for the acts that we did, and come back around in some sort of way to, resolve that. And not be so unconscious to the agreements and connections that we have, to dig a little bit deeper into the whys that we're together, so that we can help one another bring it to the next level and not live on such a superficial level. Then we can help one another, achieve that victory and move out of that duality. And it's a process. it's going to take some time for some, but I feel self-correction is, where it's at, and self-knowledge is key.
Thank you, Laura. I mean, my next question was, what is your critical advice for people in the now navigating this extraordinary time? But I think you've just said it. It's just correcting the course. And of course, you're right about those laws that govern karma and dharma. They are very needful. They are all perfect geometry, perfect feedback geometry. And I think maybe the question that was being posed was more idealistic, rather like the way that I lead questions. I envision a world beyond entropy. I envision an immortal, immanent, universal genome emerging. I'm full tilt ascensionist, and I believe that, not believe, I don't even like that word, but my knowing is anchored in this new earth immanent template that is so profoundly in coherence in true form with the universal flame, that there is no entropy, there is no disease, there is no death. Of course, there's no fucking karma either,
or
I agree. Incarnation for that matter. So I think it was more of an idealistic thing about, are we here at the onset of an age which will see an end to reincarnation?
I absolutely feel that. I feel karma is just a way to dismantle the things that keep us in that loop, that negative feedback loop, the negative patternings with ourselves. I mean, it's always our, karma to face what we have not woken up to face what has been unresolved, to, revisit something maybe again and again until we break that pattern. The parents that we choose, is that karma, or is it, an opportunity to change the ancestral lineage and patternings that were passed down to us, that lay unconscious in our bodies, that are physical ailments that have a deeper root and some kind of hijacking, some sort of belief system that is based in a distortion that the body rejects. And that's why it gets ill. That's why it gets disease. But really, it's an opportunity to get closer to ourselves. It's not really disease. It's an opportunity. And everything is an opportunity. All adversity can be embraced with the potential to open up the treasures of what lies within, instead of an opportunity to give our power away more, because it's not, there is no real karma. There's no real disease. It's just an undoing of something that the mind has spoken to the body that the body does not like. That's why it becomes a block. That's why it becomes ill. That's why it becomes out of balance, because it's not in alignment with truth or the creative imagination. The body thrives in that energy. That is the truth of what lies within ourselves to be rediscovered. And then it breaks all of that. Absolutely feel that.
Beautiful, beautifully stated. Thank you. Yes, Harald.
May I offer a little bit different definitions of karma and disease that make it much easier to look at it? With the karma, it's all about manifesting things. From our divine core, we are beings with the ability to manifest. If we manifest in a broken state, if we are caught in drama and only look through one of the perspectives, being, let's say, the perpetrator, we manifest our perpetrator existence. But because we, at the end, manifest from the divine core, all the missing aspects need to come into reality at the same time. And karma is just skipping that little end of the sentence at the same time. We manifest, but things come to us at a later time. But it's still our manifestation. It's always kind of, you try to just manifest a part of it, but you cannot just manifest the deed of a perpetrator. There always is a victim. We are all one. So at the end of the day, the victimhood must accomplish the picture to a full extent, to have everything that you have manifested with your deed. This is one thing. Disease is not karma. Disease is the attempt of the body to create a form of pain that is precisely what you need to give the soul a chance to slide into healing, because healing is painful. Rejoining a lost part of your soul, when it comes in, it is reuniting. Reunification, healing is a form of pain. So you need your body to deliver a physical plane to bring you to a state of pain from the physical level that makes you slide into the reunification while you feel this as release. If you would be healthy and the lost soul split tries to pop in, you would reject it because taking it in would be pain. Who takes in voluntarily pain? No one. So this is why the disease is necessary, to give you kind of the sliding entry into reuniting to what you originally was.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, it's such a difficult question, this, and such a. I mean, last year for me, I was very close to this because my girlfriend was dying, and she passed on the 1st of October, and I'd spent a 2.5 year period of time watching a healing journey in her and having these very intimate conversations with her about. No, we're going to escape the jaws of death, you know, and for a couple of years, you know, her prognosis had been terrible. It was like 3 weeks, you know, to live, and 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. So the fact that, you know, we extended that life by 2.5 years was pretty remarkable in any event, and was certainly a gift to her to be able to make peace with exiting this world. But she was young, and she was incredibly intelligent, incredibly beautiful, incredibly present, and incredibly not afraid of dying, but so not wanting to leave this world. And yet this terrible affliction and this constant cheating of death. And I saw something else. I mean, in her, she had told me years ago, 6-7 years ago, she had told me that her incarnation was connected to ending a curse in the blood. She felt it very deeply that the females in her line were all getting a congenital disease at the age of in their early 30s, and most of them would be dead by 40. Unless there was terrible surgical intervention removing huge chunks of the insides. It was horrible, horrible genetic condition. And when she hit 30, it kicked in. And but she had felt that her incarnation was about terminating an ancient contract. And in a sense, when she passed in October last year, that for me was the deep sense of it, was that she had come into this world to terminate something very old, very arcane, that was connected to a blood contract. And she wanted to free her sisters and others from this curse that hit every single female in the line. So I wonder, sorry to wax on this subject, but do you not think that in some cases the karma is almost arrested phenomenon and put to the side, and then there's a sacrificial element that comes in as well, that is to do with a kind of meta perspective? I think a lot of souls are coming into this world in order to dive bomb and end contracts. I learned from all the work I've done over the years in human trafficking and investigating child ritual killings and sacrificial rites, all of that the child, the babe, the infant in that equation of that satanic rite or ritual is the one in control of the venue. That at this soul level, that creature is compacted to come in, dive bomb, and become the atom seed of light that gets ingested even as the blood is drunk by these dark priests. But that light seed becomes the thing that turns the dark toward the light. I've seen that alchemy in play, and it was the only way I could really explain how that aspect, that depth of evil interacts with the light and becomes the thing that serves God's design. Does any of that make sense, Harald, in light of what you've just said?
I have seen both. I have seen angelic beings dive in to be sacrificed, to be the one that mirrors the darkness without perpetuating it. And I have seen, and this is sadly the majority of victims that complete their karmic cycles because they have sacrificed before. And when it comes to healing, we came to the state where we celebrate the moment where we kind of realize where the responsibility lies.
Yes.
Because someone that is acknowledging the fact that he has made the initial contract, that he has started the exceptional moves violating divine law, and he has signed the contracts with the dark entities to gain power, whatever. He opened the karmic cycle. Now he stands here and he came to close it. And if he wouldn't be responsible for opening them, there would be no authority to close them. Only the ones who opened them can close them. And this is how we get our success in the healing work, by leading people to the realization of the responsibility therein.
Very good.
And it is sadly the same with adrenochrome children. They all, or most of them, have served on the other side of the narrative.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, we're winding down, friends. I wanted just to get closing comments from this illustrious group of great and noble souls, and then there's a couple of other slightly more querulous questions which I'll address at the end myself to the audience. So let me invite my beloved friends. Laura, I can see you in a public space. So grateful that you came in from wherever you are. But let me get your reflections or closing comments first, so that you can exit. And thank you so much for joining us today, Laura.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be with all of you today. Yeah, I mean, just ending on the note of, I love what you just said about the dive bombing. I mean, that's what the real mission is when we wake up to it. We're born into a gaping wound. The collective is wounded. And we all carry a piece of that wound or live it in order to bring it to the light, to bring it into healing, to bring it out of the clutches of infection. Or, you know, and it's different for everybody in a certain sense. But, you know, this is where we turn pain into purpose. It becomes our purpose to take that aspect of the wounded masculine and feminine, that integration of polarity that has fallen into this lower realm of dysfunction and imbalance, like you would see in a relationship. This is why we leave these toxic relationships and careers and everything that we realize is not serving our higher good. We're setting the energy and reclaiming a sense of self-worth that is not dependent on validation from the system or anything outside of ourselves. It's on our own terms, a true abundance that's connected with the abundance of Mother Earth, with the Mother, Father, Cosmic Trinity principle, and the child of the Christ Sophia that exists within us. And every moment, everything we experience is a chance to reclaim that, to embody it, and to connect with the cosmic and natural law, which is the true love story of creation that nurtures you, that shows you your true worth, because we are worthy of the unconditional love. We can be vessels of that unconditional love towards others. This is how we nurture ourselves from the inside out and really stand in oneness with the healing process that the planet and the planetary system is healing within itself, of Atlantean cataclysms and all sort of things that launched its own essence and soul energy and spirit from its own vessel. We are anchoring back in walking in our soul-centeredness, which is the true 5D, because we're the 5D towers that override the 5G. When we're soul-centered, we speak truth, and we're that frequency that offsets all frequency distortions, manipulations, and things that keep us hooked into lower dynamics, divide and conquer, and all these things that want to keep us from helping to switch each other on and hold hands and rehabilitate together from these dark cycles of history. So thank you so much. My website's cosmicguide.org. It's been incredible to be with you all.
Thank you, Laura, darling, and looking forward to seeing you in Tennessee when we do our atonement, absolution, consecration, proclamation event of the New Earth at Tennessee. There, yeah. Thank you, my darling. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, goodbye. I want to turn to next. Great question just came through, and this is really for Harald and for Mary. It says ruby plasma, black goo. Are they connected? Maybe as kind of counterpoint geometry. That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think of that? Harald, you're the expert on black goo. And given what Mary's been saying today about the ruby plasma, because that's her shtick right now, she's really the voice on that. Does that feel like it could be a counterpoint element?
If I in the core understand duality in the way we are exposed to it. The counterpoint to the satanic black goo is the earth type black goo. This is kind of what defines good and evil as a polar field. So it's the current version of Gaia versus the future versions of Gaia in the depleted fallen state. On a different level, I just start thinking about it. If I look at the quality we left behind when this realm was created, like the water of eternity, where you never forget anything, and then the internal sphere where you divide the consciousness of humanity versus the self-organizing subconsciousness of humanity, which is the satanic form carried by the satanic black goo at the moment. Then there is something complementary between the two concepts, but not in the form of polarity or the form of, it's more like a filter. The black ruby, the ruby plasma is more like the full spectrum. And then in the sphere in between, there is something filtered away to give us the possibility to forget and fall. If we wouldn't forget, we wouldn't be capable of falling. So on that plane, yes, but it's not exactly complementary or counterpart. It's like a filter unit. If you want to have any metaphor from physics, that works.
Very good, very good. Mary, your reflections on that?
Yeah, please. What that feels like to me, because we have had experiences of cleaning up, black goo and black shadows and all of the remnants of the machine of shadow of the false mother. We have been cleaning that up. So what that tells me, because I have been talking about when you speak, Harald, that the black goo is this self-formulating subconscious. Is that how you say that? Yeah. So it's really a subconscious outside of order, kind of led by compulsions, right? Perhaps I think there was a breach, so I would imagine there's false intentions within that. So what I would intend for that is that would be absorbed completely by this ruby plasma.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. David, your closing comments, my brother.
I want to show you really quick where the fall occurred in my model. And, oh no, I can't. It says I can't share right now. So anyway.
You should be able to.
Share the model, not cancel. Okay, present, share screen. Sorry, it's just not letting it do it on my end. But anyway, the fall occurs. This is some of the deepest Egyptian knowledge that's come to my attention just recently. It's called the Aeneid, and there's an upper 9, a lower 9, and a dual set of 9 planets. We came down through Venus. Venus actually spins backwards to all the other planets. And therefore, its electrons are antimatter to ours. So Lucifer in Isaiah is cast down through the morning star, which is Venus. But then in Revelation, Jesus declares he is the morning star. And that's because the reason the fall occurs there to the earth, where these dark beings fall into, it has to remain clear. It can't be guarded by the Luciferian fallen angels. It has to be clear. So that's why Jesus reclaims it as his in Revelation, which is the work. So Venus leads to the upper 9 paradise planets, which are antimatter to us in my model from my wife from the other side, which we've talked about before. And that is an enormous subject I'd like to present at a further date. As far as rubies go, NASA astronomers use them as masers because they remove the noise in radio astronomy in the microwave and the infrared bands. So they are decluttering, denoising frequency instruments, which is very, very, very interesting, consistent with what Harald and Mary are talking about.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, David. And Christy will have taken a note there for that segment that you'd like to bring onto Lazarus. So yeah, that sounds pretty exciting. Thank you for that. Dave, your closing reflections on today's wonderful conversation.
Okay, let me give I'll mention about black goo. And here's a speculation which might interest you. In 1982, there was the Falklands War. Britain sent a fleet of their ships to take the Falklands, as you know. It's common knowledge. However, what we don't know, or is not known very well, is that this fleet separated into two parts. One part went to the Falklands Islands, the other part went down to an island in the Antarctic. And why did they do that? It was an island owned by the Argentinians, and the only people who were on there were 20 or 30 Argentinian scientists. And what were they looking for? They were looking at something which was an inert, strange substance, which they assumed was an alien presence. And it was inert because it was so cold. And the British government, or put it this way, the higher powers behind the British government wanted to retrieve some of this. So they went down there. They used the Falklands War as an excuse. They went down there, kicked out the Argentinian scientists, took over the black goo, as they called it, and they took it back home. And of course, once they got it back home in a better environment, it was no longer inert. And black goo actually was experimented upon and manifested itself in many things, such as graphene oxide and some other materials. Now, that's a speculation which can certainly be considered with regard to black goo. Was it an alien, or is it an alien formation? Is it an AI formation? Nobody really knows at the moment, but that certainly is an interesting aspect about black goo. And the final thing I would say is that ultimately it's all good news. You have to really look at that, because everything is source, everything is pure consciousness, everything is the living essence of the eternal presence. And that is who we are. Ultimately, in our own spirit self, our spiritual essence is source. Nothing leaves source. Everything exists within source. And here in the worlds of illusion, we manifest all sorts of experiences, and some of it is painful, some of it is pleasurable, and all the time we are returning ourselves, our fragmented selves, back to who we truly are. It really is the story of our identity. So nothing ever leaves source, and we are co-creators, and each one of us creates our reality according to the expansion of our own consciousness. And that's really the story of humanity.
Thank you, Dave. Beautiful. Harald, I don't know if David's reflections on the black goo and that Falklands story, I don't know if that dovetails into your own understanding and researches there, but love to get your closing reflections on the panel today.
Maybe just one sentence. The one found on the Falklands was Earth-type goo. It was a real loving version, kind of the spirit of Gaia in it. They tried to weaponize it. It failed. It refused to become swarm intelligence for weapons. And the scientists committed suicide because they realized, in the face of that loving motherhood that was represented, they realized that they are just lost in their heads. So they ripped them off by themselves. So that was kind of a funny experience for the Brits. I met people who were in contract with that type of black goo. And the influence was amazing, compassionate, telepathic, beautiful input. Whoever gave himself into that. For the panel today, I have to state something I can't otherwise, even if it's maybe a little bit unfair. I love Mary Costello.
Thank you, Harald.
Because, I mean, if you listen to it another time, it's a rare quality to have someone speaking directly from perception.
Yes.
Sometimes even without exactly knowing the scientific background, but if you stick to your perception, what comes out is clear, divine, pure truth. Yeah, and this is a quality that is so rare to find. So this is kind of my ruby for today.
That's beautiful. That's a lovely. That's a lovely.
I'm so grateful I never evolved to self-consciousness.
So Mary, you've got the floor. I wanted to ask the same of you. Any closing reflections?
We have said so much. Thank you is number one. Thank you so much for bringing us down to meet these ugly little parasitic creatures so that we can deflate them back to nothing. And all I want to say is be not afraid. That is all. Yeah.
There we go. A ho to that. Thank you so very much, friends. David, Dave, Harald, and Mary, thank you, friends, so very much. Okay. All right, friends, audience, let me just run through a couple of the last closing questions here. One, info on attending Tennessee. Friends, Tennessee is not a public event. We're anticipating 300 to 350 people turning up, but it is, and there will be hereditary elders and leaders from multiple First Nations in attendance on the ground, and there will be many religious and cultural leaders and hereditary leaders, kings of kings and the paramount chiefs coming in on the screen. We're setting up a theater there on the land. This is the New Earth, Tennessee or Tanasi land, where we are doing the atonement, returning the land to the First Nation peoples on that day. They will receive, absolve, consecrate the land, hand the land back to the Rainbow Warrior tribe. That is all of us. That is the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin, white skin people reconvening. This is the year. Midsummer's Day is the year, is the date line I've chosen this year to have this hugely catalyzing event, really to bring it all home under central sun on that day in the heart of Middle America. But the point here is that we're extending the invitation to people who have a golden ticket, who are already part of that community and participating in how we roll that forward and then syndicate that across the United States. Essentially, the golden ticket is a project for America to seed these sanctuaries, enclaves in satellite micronations in all states of America. So it's a very dedicated, pointed campaign and initiative of integration and bringing people on board who are going to be very involved in the process and be stakeholders in that sense of the process. So it's a hugely, I believe, historic event. I think it's the single most important event that will be happening anywhere in the world. And certainly we've lined up many very great dignitaries and people like Dr. David Martin and Kim coming in to also do the 12 senses and a discourse on that. And Foster Gamble says that he and Kimberly will be there, so I need to hold him to task on that. So many of my friends, Laura Eisenhower is going to be coming in. The Bishop of Jerusalem will be helping with the officiation. His Majesty, the Sovereign King of the Kingdom of Hawaii, King Edmund Silver Jr. is also coming in. Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr. and many other First Nation elders and leaders, some of whom we're still speaking to now. So it's a big, big event. It's really where we lay down our arms and form this circle and then stand on our feet. So all that we've been talking about actually today in the truest sense, and everything that Lazarus has represented vis-a-vis the resurrection of the angelic human, and certainly everything that I've been involved in my life's work for well over 2 decades has been inching its way toward this hallowed event, Midsummer's Day, today. But thank you for the question. I appreciate it. And yes, of course, we will be broadcasting it, so it will be live streamed. That much will be open sourced. Thank you for the question. Many are receiving questions that will, this is from Kathy. So I want to speak to this. Many are receiving a message that we must have prioritized focused and consistent cleansing of our bodies, upping our game. Has anyone received within the last week a clarity about this, and what were your thoughts? Well, I'm the one who's received that clarity. So thank you for the question. I really appreciate it, Kathy. Yeah, it is all coming to roost. And I think what you've tapped into is what we've been speaking to today about this end of this arcane 25,920 year cycle of time, and this emergence of the Kali Satya, this new age that's upon us. And we're having to each of us up our game, absolutely, categorically, undeniably, irrefutably. That's what this is all about. Thank you for the question. And finally, Kismet or Theo McFarlane asking, Pam Gregory is a brilliant astrologer, YouTube channel. Someone asking about her earlier as well. She's not been saying very kind things about me to people. I'm not quite sure what her umbrage is with me. I find it regrettable that somebody who I don't know and haven't met is shit talking me, and I'm saddened by it, obviously. But I don't know the woman. I've heard she's very good. I very much doubt whether she could be good in divinations if she gets it so wrong with me. I know who I am. In any event, friends, thank you. We're coming up. Let me quickly run through the next segment. So we've just departed the alphabet of evil from Yaldabaoth to Lucifer. Next up will be controlled demolition of reality with my buddy, Brad Olsen, followed by great conversation with Nancy Thames, the Galactic Invitation, a call to action for humanity. And then following that, the Universal Conspiracy for AI Dominance with Jane Evershed. And then finally, Anatomy of the Zeitgeist, revealing the invisible hand with the fantastic Jason Christoph. Fantastic conversation with him. And again, finally, this here, anyone in or around Dallas area, you're welcome to join this. It's free entry, like all of my tours. I don't work in the United States. I do social tours. I just talk to people. So I'm covering these tours and would love to see you. Scott McKay, Patriot Street Fighter, will be with me tomorrow, and Marsha Willardson will be coming in on the screen to talk about sovereignty law and about how we're doing what we're doing. This is really where the Patriot Street Fighter Network and the New Earth Network are conjoining on the Tennessee Project and beyond, in how we're consolidating our forces and our networks in this new age of embodying and acting and manifesting and building the new earth, actually creating these communities like we are doing in Mexico and Bacala, like we've done in Bali, and we're moving on to Lombok in Indonesia and in Africa. I'll be leaving on Sunday for Southern Africa and Central Africa, where I will be with my team on the ground there. And I'll do some broadcasting whilst I'm in Africa, but very excited. This is the next big trip out there to consolidate the land holdings and the prospect of the New Earth Africa nation, the huge end game project that we've been working towards. I've been working towards for many years, and I'll speak more about that, but only once the contracts and treaties are in hand. It's very exciting. It's the cornerstone to what we're building for this greater New Earth movement. And I will go into that in some detail from Barotseland, Zambia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, the various places I'll be on this trip in Africa, leaving on Sunday. So thank you, friends, for joining me in this panel. I'm so happy to have had David Sereda and Dave Emery, Mary Costello, and Harald Kautz-Vella on the same panel. And Laura, what a fantastic grouping, and the comments that have been coming back have been terrific. Thank you for joining me. Christy, have I missed anything at all? Producer Christy, I probably have, because I haven't referred once to my production notes. So let me do the courtesy of doing that before I bugger off. I always go off on a tangent, never go back to my production notes, and I apologize. So I've been asked to comment on the upcoming pieces. I know we have 6 minutes left before my time runs out here. And I think I've pretty much the other thing, don't forget, friends, is the, Christy, do we have a slide of the show I'm doing, the retreat I'm doing on the Mediterranean? If not, it should be there. We'll need to keep that up there. Let me see if I can find it, friends. Nope, it's not on this computer. Forgive me. Christy, if we could just in the links make sure that we also post up the Mediterranean cruise, because that we do need to start doing promotions on that. Anyone wanting to join me, Margot Anand and Scott McKay for 12 days of unadulterated naughtiness, and Dave Emery on the Mediterranean, that's kicking off in Athens, moving its way through, I think, Cyprus to Egypt and Turkey. And we're going to be covering picking up on what we intended last year when I aborted the cruise last year for obvious reasons that I've just given and alluded to a little earlier. I was very connected to personal stuff happening late last year. And so I had to abort that cruise, but it's back on again for this year. Very much looking forward to it. And I think we've got a period of about a couple of weeks where we have to fill out our spots. So I'll be doing some pretty heavy promotions on that. Maybe Scott McKay and I will drop in on media tomorrow and do that. So that's it for me, friends. Thank you. And thank you, anyone coming to Dallas. Happy to give you a big hug. Spend time. It's going to be a great show tomorrow. It does start at 1 p.m. and goes on. Actually, 1 o'clock is meet and greet, and 2 p.m. the show kicks off, ends at 5 p.m. and then we'll probably loiter a little bit longer. If you're in and around Dallas, Texas, do come. It's free entry, but please do RSVP, okay, to tour@sashastone.com, T-O-U-R, tour@sashastone.com, because we need to reserve seats for you if you're going to be turning up. I think we're already a full house. Thank you, friends. Over and out. Christy, over to you. Well, friends, very occasionally I get to thoroughly enjoy these Lazarus segments. They're always fascinating, always blessed to be speaking to the world's leading scientists, doctors in